Hello, everyone. Long time no see. This is Liz, one of the resident film buffs at the Darien Public Library. I know that there's a few here. I'm back for one last live stream of 2020, the year that nearly broke us all. So, as you may know, we kind of stopped doing the live streams mainly because a lot of stuff was getting kind of somewhat back to something resembling normal at the library. But I did want to jump back on to talk about some of my favorite films of 2020. This was obviously a very strange year because middle of March, theaters just closed and they've kind of opened back up. And in the summer and early fall, I went, but as cases started to rise again, I just decided, you know what, not a great idea. I can watch Wonder Woman on HBO Max, which, either way, that movie's not great. It's nowhere near as bad as everyone says it is. Anyway, I would like to talk about my top 10 of this year because though we had, limited theater runs, there were a lot of good films that were released. Some of these are cases of movies that hit the festival circuit in 2019 and were going to have a theatrical release in 2020, but they didn't, so video release it was. I am counting those. I tend to be a little more lax with movies that either came from another country or had the festival circuit the year before. I wait for at least a somewhat sizable release in the United States. Again, this year was a little not like that. I was kind of heartbroken to find out, oh, Portrait of a Lady on Fire got a release last year, so unfortunately it's not on my list. If it was, it would have been tied with number one with another spot. But this was a great year. Couple of honorable mentions. I think it was a good year for horror still. We had Freaky, a really fun body swap horror comedy. We had The Blood Quantum, which is a cool, it's a Canadian film. It's an indigenous take on a zombie feature. And the Soska sisters remade David Cronenberg's Rabid and put their own really fun spin on it. I am not anti-remake. What I am is anti-remakes who just try to ape the original, and I'm always a big fan of remakes that try to do something different or put their own spin on it. That's why I liked the Suspiria remake in 2018. Um, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, that shows that he is still one of the best filmmakers working today. That just didn't hit me the same way like Black Klansman hit me, because that was really, I think, a return to great filmmaking for him. Honestly, truth be told, I did not watch a lot of films that streamed. This year truly taught me that the theatrical experience is how I like to experience films. And, or I do love physical media, which I know everything streams now, but I'm going to tell you this. If you have physical media, you truly do own your copy. Because even if you buy a digital copy, eventually, like, Apple can just be like, actually, no, you don't own it. So can Amazon. Or if you're streaming one day, something you like is gone. So if you truly like a movie, buy a copy. And this is why the library, we still buy films for people to watch. Also, because not everyone streams. But yeah, so you are probably going to see, like, where is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I haven't watched yet. Whenever it's streaming, I can't really find the motivation to watch it the way I would to go to a theater. So unfortunately, there are going to be some holes in the list, but there were still some really good movies that came out this year, and I'd like to talk about them. So we're going to start with my top 10. There is a tie for the 10 spot. Unfortunately, I tried to get the films that we had. One of them's out. So the first one is going to be The Lodge. This was a horror film that came out in January of this year. Stars Riley Keough as a woman who, she is the sole survivor of a Heaven's Gate style religious mass suicide. And she is stuck in the house with her fiance's awful children from a first marriage. And it is a movie that goes some places I didn't quite expect it. I think that advertising didn't do it justice, so people went in expecting a different movie. But Riley Keough just gives an amazing performance. She absolutely anchors this movie. Also, those kid actors, I will say, do a good job because I hated those kids. But it was an absolutely kind of chilling existential dread movie that is totally my thing. And I really liked it. I think it was the debut English feature from the directors of the German film Goodnight Mommy. The other number 10 is Kelly Reichardt's First Cow. So this is completely on the other end of the spectrum. This is just a kind film about America. Although it takes place in Oregon, which was not a state at the point when the movie takes place, but it's about friendship. It's about people trying to make their own way. I like Kelly Reichardt's films because they're very kind of just like you're peering in on an instant of someone's lives. And there's no huge climax. There's never any like real over the top evil antagonist. But it's a very humane movie, and that's why I like her stuff. Meek's Cutoff is great. Wendy and Lucy is a phenomenal film. And I am very glad that even with COVID, First Cow got a release. Now for number 9, it is another tie. I actually have both movies here. It is an Elisabeth Moss double feature. I really like Elisabeth Moss, not just because we share a name, and technically we don't. She spells hers with an S. I think she is one of the best actresses working today, and I'm really happy that she has found like a niche post Mad Men, because I feel like a lot of the other actresses on that show really, I mean, they don't have to work, they have Mad Men money, but I don't think they have gotten great roles since then. She came out of that show just ready to go. And so the first is The Invisible Man, which is a take on we all know the Invisible Man story, and it's turned into a film about surviving an abusive partner in a relationship where the person gaslights you. It is such a great take on this story and a very now take on this story. But at the same time, even though it's a very 2020 film, I don't think it'll be dated. I think it will stand the test of time and be seen as a good contemporary take on the story. But the other film, and honestly, I think were I not doing double feature, it would have ranked higher, is Shirley. And this is Elisabeth Moss playing Shirley Jackson. She is fantastic. One of the best performances of the year, I think. I don't know what the Oscars are going to look like this year, but I really hope I see Elisabeth Moss, specifically for Shirley in there. I think it's great. It's haunting. It plays with you. It almost feels like you're living in a Shirley Jackson story. If you have not yet seen this, absolutely watch it. Number 8, obviously out right now, Bill and Ted Face the Music. This movie, I think I described it when I saw it as this is the balm 2020 needs. We just need Bill and Ted, Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, just come in and tell us be excellent to each other. And that is a wonderful mantra. Honestly, we should be putting statues of them up with that mantra in a plaque. This was a sequel that people have been trying to make for years, and I think the fact that it finally happened was amazing, and the fact that it was actually good. I don't think it reaches the heights of the first Bill and Ted. Second one, I can take or leave. I think it still has points, but it manages to pay tribute to those two movies so well, but also not completely mire in nostalgia. It absolutely manages to be a movie about Bill and Ted living in 2020. The actresses who play their daughters are great. Samara Weaving and, unfortunately, I'm blanking on the other actress's name. They are absolutely great, not just imitating Keanu and Alex, but they're very great and believable as potentially their offspring. And there's also some really nice shout outs to George Carlin in there. We have Kirsten Shaw playing Kelly, who is Rufus, his daughter. And if you did not know, George Carlin's daughter's name in real life is Kelly. And I think Kelly Carlin herself has a couple of background roles in there. So it's just it is a nice way to pay tribute to the series and give us something new. So number 7 is the one streaming movie included on here because what if I'm just lazy? But it is Mignons or Cuties, aka the movie that blew up the internet for 2 weeks. So why am I including this? Just to make people mad? No. I am including it because rather than getting caught up in the controversy over the poster, which, my God, that poster was horrible, I decided, okay, I'm going to actually do some more research on this movie. So I read some interviews with the director, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to watch this movie and decide for myself. And I actually found that the movie was pretty good. There are parts of it that are absolutely like cringe level uncomfortable, but they're supposed to be. But what I found, the broader film, dancing is not that big a part of it. It's more these young girls, the main character, Amy in particular, trying to navigate their puberty and adolescence and becoming a woman when they're bombarded with these images, both from society, from tradition, and from social media, without any real way to navigate and process it, and just how destructive it can be. And I think it manages, the director, Maimouna Doucouré, hope I'm saying her name correctly, I think she managed to make a film that addresses some very real issues that young girls are facing without making it an after school special. I mean, none of these girls are, nothing horrible happens to them. No one's assaulted, no one's beaten, no one is like shamed and turned away forever. There's almost something refreshing about the fact that these girls, the worst that happens to them is they are embarrassed, because that dance scene everyone shared, within the universe of the movie, everyone is horrified and booing them, and they're all like, what happened? Everyone liked us online. It's like, well, that's because the internet's a cesspool and was a mistake. The worst they get is embarrassed, and the main character is probably strained from her friends, but she realizes, like, okay, this is a mistake. This isn't who I want to be, and I'm going to enjoy the few years of actual childhood I have left. And actually, someone who is of Senegalese descent pointed out that she wears red, a red shirt at the end. That is actually the color of childhood, and the dress that she's supposed to wear to her father's wedding to his second wife, by the way. So that kind of puts her through an emotional tailspin, is blue, which is the color of like a mature woman. So you have this great little scene at the end of the movie where she rejects both the dance clothing and the dress from her culture that also symbolizes you're an adult woman now, and just says, no, I'm going to be a kid. It might not be a movie for everybody, but it's something that I think gets the very confusing nature and trauma of adolescence really well, but it also manages to not make it, again, a punishing movie for any of these characters. So, again, rather than getting outraged, sometimes you should watch it. Also, by the way, that poster absolutely does not represent the film. And to prove this, I'm going to show you the French poster. Give me a second. So, the French poster for Cuties. This is what it looks like. Far cry from that Netflix atrocity. So, if there's anyone we should be mad at, it's whoever Netflix outsourced that nonsense to. Anywho, moving on to number 6, because I went on for that for a while. Swallow. Fun fact, this was also on one of John Waters' best of 2020 list. I really liked this movie. I didn't know what to expect. I actually went in thinking it might be a horror film, but it's actually more of a psychological drama. The main character is played by Haley Bennett, and she's a little retail girl who married rich, and she just feels very, cloistered. Her in-laws are constantly like checking in on her. They're like, when are you having a baby? How are you doing? And when she gets pregnant, they're like, how are you doing? So she starts to have pica, which is where people will eat foreign objects. Obviously not good for you. And it is, rather than a body horror film, it is a journey as to this woman both kind of figuring out the core of her issues and finding freedom in an increasingly repressive home. It actually kind of pairs similarly well with The Invisible Man. And a great performance by Haley Bennett, who really never, I've seen her in a few movies, but she never really was on my radar. But this is a fantastic, fantastic performance, and very understated as well. Anyone who thinks that you need to yell and scream to be an actress or an actor, watch this and you will see how much you can do with silence. Number 5, another, we just needed some fun for this year, Harley Quinn's Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. So, again, we didn't have a ton of superhero movies this year. Wonder Woman 84, I definitely will put in the it was okay, but it was disappointing category. Birds of Prey, on the other hand, just a ball. Absolute blast, beginning to end. One of the best action sequences I've seen in a while. A really well choreographed fight in a funhouse. Margot Robbie took this character who, she has an iffy history, but she took the character from being very male gaze fantasy in Suicide Squad, and she helped kind of spearhead this movie as well and just reinvent Harley Quinn into not stereotypical independent woman, but definitely someone's like, I don't need the Joker. Um, and really, I think, a good reinvention for the character. And obviously, you can tell Margot Robbie just loves playing Harley Quinn. Also, other great performances. Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Huntress is great. Rosie Perez is good in it. Also, Ali Wong is in it for 2 minutes. So I'm like, hi, Ali Wong. Ewan McGregor, who is having the time of his life playing a villain. It's a lot of fun. And again, best superhero movie that came out this year. And honestly, I think even if all the other stuff that was slated to come out came out, this would probably still be my number one. It's an absolute blast, start to finish. Also, just Harley Quinn in like sad breakup mode is one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. Just her crying on the couch, eating Cheese Whiz, like I cackled in the theater. Moving on to number 4, double feature again, probably the saddest double feature we'll ever have. Ken Loach's Sorry We Missed You, and The Assistant, which I believe is the debut feature of Kitty Green. And these are both movies about people who are stuck in these really awful situations, in situations where outsiders will look at this and say, well, why don't you just leave? And what these films illustrate is how hard it is to actually leave these. Sorry We Missed You is about a British family where the father works for, I guess I would say, like a mix between Uber and Amazon, and how he gets really suckered into this you can be your own boss mantra. And it turns out overtaking his life, costing him money. Any little thing that happens to him, he's docked pay. And it becomes this cycle. I won't spoil the end of the movie, but it's one where all signs are pointing to, you should quit this job. This job is abusing you. But he says, no, I'm in the hole to this job now. I have to go to work. In the words, I have to go to work will never sound more heartbreaking than they will at the end of this feature. It is a gut-wrenching movie, but in terms, especially since more and more of the work for people is becoming gig work in these places where they'll make you work 40 hours a week and do all this work for them, but then say technically you're an independent contractor, we don't need to pay you health insurance. Movies like this are important and need to be seen. And the other is The Assistant, which comes out on the heels of the Me Too movement in Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein thankfully being in jail. But everyone asks these questions of, how did this happen for so long? How did this go on for so long? And this is a film that shows you how. Julia Garner, who is amazing in this, and she's another one where I'm like, if there's justice, she'll be in the Best Actress category. She's a young, kind of like an intern. She wants to produce herself. She's a college graduate. She works for this film producer, and it's just a day in the life. But she starts today, this particular day, she starts to notice something really weird and unsettling. And it shows what happens when she goes to human resources. She's just told, like, ooh, if this isn't true, you'll get fired. And there's 400 other people who want your job and will be hired in like a minute. And it just shows how silence is really beaten into people and how people are scared and held hostage by the career to stay silent. Again, it's like Sorry We Missed You, where people could look at Sorry We Missed You and go, why doesn't this guy just quit his job? The same goes here. Why don't more people speak out? Well, because they're bullied into not doing that. Again, I think probably 2 of the most important films to come out this year, and hope y'all see them. Number 3, thankfully, all of those movies are out, meaning people are watching them, so yay. Color Out of Space. Welcome back, Richard Stanley. If you're not familiar with who he is, he directed 2 great independent features, Hardware and Dust Devil. And then he got the job to direct Island of Dr. Moreau in the 90s and got kicked off because Marlon Brando's... Honestly, that production's a mess, and there's a great documentary called Lost Soul about it. Anyway, he took a real long hiatus from filmmaking, and he comes back to adapt an H.P. Lovecraft story, and he talk about a way to announce yourself as a filmmaker again. The colors are weird, the body horror effects are great. Nicolas Cage is both unhinged and restrained, and there are images in this movie that I don't think I'm going to forget or get out of my mind for a really long time. It's the best horror feature to come out this year, I think, by a country mile, and science fiction as well. And it really is one of those movies where I kind of wish it had gotten a wider release because I think it deserved to have more people see it. But now that it's on home video, people can. If you are a horror, a sci-fi, or a Nick Cage fan, watch this movie. And number 2 was a movie that really snuck up on me, and it is called Driveways. There is no real, like, I should say, like, traditional plot structure to Driveways. There is no climax. There's no antagonist. It is simply a film about kindness and how important it is to be good to each other, and how our small acts of neighborly kindness can actually have a big effect on people. Hong Chow plays a woman who her sisters died. She and her son are going to clean out her house. So she's in a new area. She is feeling isolated. Brian Dennehy is the next door neighbor, and I was actually kind of worried this was going to go into Clint Eastwood and Gran Torino territory, where it's like, oh no, he's going to have to look like he's going to learn from Hong Chow how to not be racist, and that's not a movie. I don't know if I that's not a movie I need right now. But turns out that's not the movie. Ends up developing kind of a kinship with Hong Chow's son. He notices, like, he's kind of a shy kid and just says, hey, you want to just come over and hang out on the porch? I have National Geographic so you can read. He ends up looking after her while the mother is getting everything set up with the house. And she starts forming relationships with him and other people in the street. It is just a wonderful ode to being good to each other and being good to your neighbor. And I think for 2020, that is absolutely a film that's needed. Wonderful movie. It'll bring a tear to your eye at the end of it. But again, a beautiful ode to kindness. And my number 1 film of the year, I know I'm going on a little long, or real long, is Eliza Hittman's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. She has made 2 other films, A Very Young Girl and Beach Rats. She's definitely someone who likes to focus on, I wouldn't say similar to Cuties, because I think they're dealing with different things. Cuties is dealing more with, like, expectations of adolescence versus this is kids who have actual trouble. Honestly, Portrait of a Lady on Fire would have been here too, but again, 2019 release, c'est la vie. Never, Really, Sometimes, Always is about a young girl named Autumn. She lives in a town in Pennsylvania. She is pregnant. We don't know how. We don't know who the parent is, but we know that she goes to the one place in town, and all they do is give her a drugstore test and show her some videos, and she's like, this isn't quite what I need. So the one ally she has, because she doesn't want to tell her parents, we don't know why, we just know this is what the situation is. Her one ally is her cousin, who gets some money, and they go to New York to be able to obtain an abortion. And it is something that, based on the plot of this film, it is definitely an inherently political film because of what it discusses. But the way this film tackles the issue is probably the most apolitical way possible. Not once is there ever a debate between anybody. Autumn's character she actually doesn't say too much. She's kind of just like, look, I'm here to get this taken care of. She never has this big soliloquy or this big soapbox speech to anybody about how this is my right, I shouldn't have to be going through this. Because that is not the type of filmmaker Eliza Hittman is. She rather would just show the story as true to real life as it possibly is. And it's something where it can be funny, it can be sad. The scene where Autumn goes to Planned Parenthood in New York and she talks to a counselor who tries to get any answer to her about, like, what are your relationships like? Do you feel safe? And you see how much this girl is keeping in but still can't say. Again, if there's justice in the world, Sydney Flanagan, who plays Autumn, will be a front runner for Best Actress, but it'll probably be Amy Adams in Hillbilly Elegy. But really, like, if you want an example for how to tackle a political issue without trying to make it very partisan or alienating, I think this film is absolutely how to do it. And it's very interesting to see, like, where independent film has gone, because about 10 years ago, independent film was still very quirky. It was funny, whereas independent film is kind of looking the way independent film did in the 70s, where people were trying to tackle real life issues, whereas a lot of studio productions now are big budget fantasy features. So I don't know, like I don't think any other movie kind of hit me the way that one did. And especially since there are a lot of films that came out this year that try to tackle with reality rather than fantasy, it's just such a great example as to how to be a good filmmaker, how to not sensationalize anything, and how to just get good performances out of your actors. Both of the young actors, both of the actresses in this movie are, I think, new to acting, and you could not tell. Um, and it's also a good case for minimalism in film. I think we have so much new technology in movies, but I would say similar to something like, say, the Florida Project. Sometimes you just need people, you just need actors, and you just need a compelling story and compelling characters. Because all of the effects in the world can't save something that isn't compelling, and never, rarely, sometimes, always is 100% compelling. So hopefully you'll check these movies out. And of course, I'm always at the information desk if you want any recommendations. And I hope that everyone has a good New Year's Eve, and we'll all be happy when 2021 arrives and 2020 can be bid adieu. So have a great day, and I will see you at the reference desk.